buckle up. We're talking about Natalia Grace because as somebody who's in the medical field, I'm literally a mental health professional, I cannot take dealing with y'all missing this again. Because every single time, no matter how many times I see videos, no matter how many people talk about it, nobody brings this part up, ever. And as anybody in the medical field will tell you, this is very, very, very deeply concerning. And it's the same reason that the Gypsy Rose situation is concerning. So first of all, Natalia Grace was definitely a child at the time, right? Now, they've had medical stuff come out and everything, and you can also just tell by looking at her that she was a child at the time. Started watching Good American Family thinking they were finally going to show, like, how crazy the parents were, but it seems like it's not going. Now, first of all, I see all these people who always want to be like, oh, I know she was really a kid, but she's definitely like a sociopath or something, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, does Natalia, from a mental health professional's perspective, yes, Natalia Grace has some sort of mental health conditions, but that's kind of what happens when a child goes through trauma, right? Like, she had already been through traumatic stuff when she was adopted, so she was going to have conditions. A lot of kids that go through this kind of stuff have the first signs of getting BPD. They have ODD. There's all kinds of things that can happen. All kinds of things that, if taken care of properly, either become 100% manageable or even they grow out of. But instead, she was met with more trauma, more severe trauma. So yeah, she's gonna be not in the best mental health, like for the rest of her life, most likely. Now, I am not condoning any bad action she takes as an adult. Just because there's a reason doesn't mean it's justified, but there is reasoning behind it. And when she was a child, instead of taking her to, like, mental health professionals, like I said, I used to work in an at-risk youth center in Georgia, like an LGBTQ at-risk youth center, and I saw this kind of stuff all the time. These kids would act out because they had been through trauma at home. Hell, if you don't know me, I was trafficked as a child, okay? I went through some stuff, and I literally isolated. Now, I didn't get violent or anything like that. I was self-destructive instead. But kids who go through things are going to have different reactions. They're going to have way different cope. It can literally change your brain. Like, I could do an entire hour-long presentation on brain chemistry and how it is affected during different developmental stages. But here's the thing that nobody ever seems to talk about this case when it's brought up again that drives me insane. It's the same thing that's wrong with the Gypsy Rose case and never gets brought up. When they did the court documentation, right? When they did not just, this family didn't just go to a judge and the judge was like, yep, I'm looking at her. Yep, definitely 22-year-old. Here, you sign no. No, they had to bring medical documentation to this judge. And they had 4 medical providers in that documentation that said she was an adult at the time, that we now know is wrong. Like, they, Lifetime hired the private doctor and everything, private physician, and got all that done, right, and proved that she was a child at the time. But you know what never, ever happened? Any of those 4 providers being held any accountable. These are people who are still working on patients to this day who couldn't even tell the difference in a child and an adult because they had a disability. Do you know how terrifying that is? It's been years, and they are still practicing, unless they've retired, and I just don't know about the retirement. But they've been practicing for years. They were already practicing for years when they met Natalia, and then they got to continue to practice. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, they had, for the court, this is also, most of these court records are public. Some of them are still private, and there's some stuff that's, like, redacted, like they take out names and stuff. But they had, on court documents, they said they went to a primary, they went to a geneticist, they went to an OBGYN, and they went to a dentist. That's why the dental record thing gets brought up so much in a lot of these, like, remake shows. You know what's not on that list? A mental health professional, which I find ironic, considering their experiences and stuff. The parents' experience in the past, but we're not doing that. We're not talking about that part. Like, do you know the damage for medical professionals being openly practicing malpractice? Like, this level of bad could cause, people could have lost their lives. People can have lost their lives, and we just don't know it because of the incompetence of these physicians. And the dentist, because, technically they're a doctor, but people get mad if I don't separate. And for everybody who's like, oh, it's been too long, they can't do anything, that is incorrect. That is completely incorrect. Anybody in the medical field will tell you, it does not matter how long it's been. For example, like I said, if you don't know my story, I was trafficked as a kid and stuff because my parents were pieces of shit. Well, my mom also has Munchausen's and Munchausen's by proxy. That's why I got so connected to the Gypsy Rose thing. And that's kind of also how I ended up getting trafficked, because my mom was just anything for attention, right? I had multiple physicians as a child, who documented that it was Munchausen's by proxy. Like, it is on my paperwork, right? But I did have Dr. Mash in Charleston, West Virginia, who was out of his mind and literally was just a pill pusher and stuff. So would give my mom whatever she wanted, false. And he ended up losing his license because when I was an adult and I pulled my records and I knew the whole fucking time, the only thing I ever had that actually was real was the autism. I went and reported him, and they opened up an entire investigation, found out about the pill pushing and everything, and he ended up losing his license. Even though at that time, I hadn't seen him in 7 years. By the time I had done that, I remembered him because he was one of the most people. So yes, they can still do something about it. Honestly, I think Natalia Grace should sue. That's what I think she should do. She should also be suing them. But at the very bare minimum, these people need to have their license yanked away. They should be also deep investigation. But the fact that every single time one of these shows comes out, everybody talks about the parents, everybody talks about her, and all of that stuff, but nobody ever, there are people that bring it up. The only people I've ever seen bringing it up, though, are people within the dwarfism community. People who have these conditions. But everybody else that talks about it just brings about the freaking parents. And it's dude, they're sitting in, they need to be facing consequences and stuff, right? But that doesn't mean that we just let these medical professionals go. The second the mother was arrested, there should have been an investigation on all 4 of those medical professionals. And any others that were involved, because it just listed, it says they only took them to her to those 4, that's what's documented, but they could have taken it to other people too. We don't know. Why are these people still practicing? And I'm sorry, this is 7.5 minutes, but it's so frustrating because it is so dangerous. It is so dangerous. Like I said, the Gypsy Rose stuff, none of them have still faced, it's been a while, but you can still go back. Why are we not doing something about that? Why are we not? It doesn't matter if you like Gypsy Rose or not, because I know a lot of people disagree with Gypsy Rose. That does not change the fact that there's been medical documentation that has come out and medical proof that those surgeries and stuff were not necessary. Could you imagine cutting somebody open without documentation because the mom's like, oh, well, Hurricane Katrina. Actually, I had a large part of my family affected by that. And I could not imagine being like, oh yeah, cut me open, give me a surgery, give my kid a surgery, blah, 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 because of this and that. No. They proved that she didn't, not eat all the medication and all that stuff. She did have the chromosome issue, but that was it. The rest of the stuff was just no. Yet these medical professionals are still working to this day. It is terrifying. Imagine the next time you go to the doctor and you have no idea because they, courts redacted the name and stuff. So you go to the doctor and you're just trying to have a regular, checkup, regular procedure, anything, and it's one of those doctors, and you don't know about it, and they have a long history of malpractice, and then you pass away on the table, and they say, oh, it's regular surgery complications, when realistically, that person has no idea what they're doing, and they've proven they've had no idea what they're doing, because they're out here freaking cutting people open, and diagnosing them, and trying to age them up, and everything else, and never facing consequence for it. It is dangerous. It is scary. As a disabled veteran who actually now has disabilities, and I have 2 neurodivergent children, it is so terrifying going to, I do such deep research before I have any new physician. And I always make sure there's reviews from real patients, because I want to know, because you have no idea some of these doctors passed. An estimated 250,000 people, 250,000 people, die every single year in the U.S. from medical malpractice. Medical errors completely preventable. And that is only the ones that are caught. That does not include all the rest of them. That is only the ones that are caught. That's 250,000 completely preventable passing aways. We need to start holding medical professionals accountable.